Hello YouTube. Yes, I'm back and I have something special for you because something new arrived finally on my doorstep. I know if you read the video description it's obvious, but I'll just show you the pieces and you can just try to figure out what it is. Yes, it's the UltraHDMI Hardware Revision 2. I hate English. I don't like it. Okay, today I want to install this module in my N64. In my last video I took it apart and replaced the capacitors, and after that I decided to not put it back together again. So we can today just start with the install. First of all, we need to talk a little bit about the revisions of the Nintendo 64. My revision is an early PAL version, and there are a lot of different board revisions, and there are also special board revisions, or not special board revisions, but special component placements for the NTSC and other versions. I've looked into the forum where the Group-Buy was, and they told me that on my PAL revision I don't need to think about any specialties. But I just wanted to let you know that on NTSC models you have to remove some of the components placed here and here, because there is a sync signal on the pin here that might be provided with 12 volts. And if you just connect your UltraHDMI module with this flat flex cable that uses the sync signal, you'll burn it up. And also, if there is an RGB signal connected from the Nintendo 64, you are just trying to mix together two signals, and you'll have nothing or just garbage on your screen. So you have to watch out and remove the components if needed. But I'll just show you with my multimeter, and you should check this on your version too if you don't have the same version as I have, that these pins are not connected. I'm just quickly checking the 12 volt, which is labeled here against the sync signal, which is labeled on the PCB too, and there's absolutely no connection. And if I try this with the ground, there's also no connection. To double check, I'll just try the ground signal, and you see on the multimeter that there is a very good connection. And if I check the other pins, you'll see just the open line or overflow on the multimeter. So these pins are also not connected. And the ground again is connected. So we don't have to worry about anything. So I hope you can see this cable. There are two numbers that mark pin 1 and pin 2, and you can see that there are, if I focus, that there are number 1 and number 2 marked on the PCB. So we can just align the cables number 1 and 2, put it down over the pins, so the pins go through the holes, and just try to solder it down. Perhaps I will use a tweezer to weigh it down so it stays on the pads. Okay, with that step done, I hope this cable is not in the way for our further steps. So let's just proceed. But when I read the documentation correctly, there is a little foam pad that should be placed over here. Okay, but perhaps just after we put the shielding case on the spot again, because it might be in the way if we don't look close enough. So this is the main cable of the UltraHDMI. It has this strangely shaped part, which is made to connect directly to the pins of the main IC. And you can find out the correct orientation, if it's this way or that way, just by looking for the description. When you can read the text, it's correctly. When you cannot read the text, it's not correct. But the pins on this connector look correctly from both sides. So it's good to know which way around the cable should be connected. So on the left, you got 3 pins, and on the right you got 1 pin. And the first pin on the left side must be connected to the 6th pin of the IC. So I'll just move the focus down to the IC, and we can get started soldering the main connection. So I hope this is big enough on your screens, because I can't zoom in any further. So let us just try to find the correct place. There are small little dots on the PCB. They are on every 5th pin, so it makes it easier to count. You can see pin 1 is marked, pin 5 is marked, and pin 6 comes direct next to pin 5. So soldering it this way would be very hard. So we will just get a little bit of Kapton tape and try to fix the cable in place. Oh yeah, and these two connections and these two connections need to go to other places on the PCB further down the line, so we should try not to stick them down. Okay, I can't just avoid sticking that contact down, so I'll need to free it later in the process. And if you hear strange sounds from the background, that might be people outside or just my cat. It's not sticking. It's a little bit more complicated than I thought. Any ideas? Not at the moment. So let's get further. I have this mini fluxer. It's just not solder paste, it's the other thing that makes the solder boil. Ripped it away. Okay, off camera I tried to find a solution to the sticking problem. I'll just try to clean the PCB a little bit with isopropyl alcohol and hope that the Kapton tape will stick better to the PCB. And then we will try to get a little bit of Kapton tape that's more suited to the gap we have between the components, so that the Kapton tape is not lifted up by the components that are in the way. Okay, it's too big, I know, but I will be careful using it, I promise. Not working as expected. Okay, I see it's in the way too. And try not to cut your flat flex cable while doing this, or your day might be ruined. this is not fun. Okay. Other side. So I hope this is correctly aligned. It looks like could be perhaps a little bit more to the right, but okay. And now we need to put down the flux without loosening the tape again, because it might crawl under the tape, and just loosen the glue. And it did. More. Why? That's not fun. Not fun at all. Okay. Another idea. Just try to solder this shit down. A little bit of solder. A lot of flux. Flex PCB. Correctly aligned. Ooh, that's hot. I just got to my finger. Okay, that's in place, at least. I need something to weigh it down. Okay, a little bit more weight. Oh, interesting construction. Yes, that looks good. To me, at least. The fizzling sound is not the PCB, it's just the flux doing its job. So no worries there. Okay. Some more contacts, and I hope that's it. And yes, I used no clean flux. I will later try to clean the board a little bit from the flux, but it should not really be necessary. I think most of my flux is just running under the chip and not to the contacts. And that's why I'm getting such a big bridge down there and perhaps a little bit too much solder. Like Louis Rossmann said, more flux. There is never too much flux. So I'm dragging the solder away from the Ultra HDMI connector, and I think then I'll just use a little bit of solder wick to get it away. That might look good. Okay, then the next parts. There is a cable which is marked 3.3 volt that needs to go to this capacitor, and a cable marked 5 volts. This one that needs to go to this capacitor, and there are 2 other unmarked cables, one of which is used for the for getting the controller data, and the other one is used to do a soft reset where the Ultra HDMI can trigger the reset button connection from the reset button. And you can reset your console from the Ultra HDMI by pressing a specific combination of buttons on your controller. But if your game crashed, your controller data is not read anymore, and your Ultra HDMI won't notice what buttons you pressed. So when your game crashes, you need to you still need to press the reset button, the physical reset switch on your console. So then let's just try to get this cable. I think it's solderable from both sides, yes, and we need to move it there, hold it, and solder it down. So I think it's a good idea to just add a little bit of solder to the tip of the cable before we connect it to the capacitor. And now we can try to solder this cable to the capacitor. Looks good to me. Then I'll add solder to the cable, to the 5 volt cable. And then I'll try to solder it down as well. Yeah, that also looks good to me. Now on this version, of the N64, you can see there is a triangle of vias or connections that go through the board, and this is one of the ways to recognize which version of the board it is. And on this version with the via triangle, you need to connect the longer cable to pin 16 of the PIF chip, and the shorter cable, if you want to use the in-game reset, to the 27th pin of this chip. So the longer cable will be in the way when we solder it first, so we should solder the shorter cable first. But before we can do that, I will add a little bit of solder to the tips of both cables. And then I will try to find a way to solder down these cables without shorting them to one of the other pins of this chip. And I'll try to find a way to bend them without breaking them. So the pad on this cable is not a square, it's a rectangle. So I might try to just solder it in this way and not from the top. So a little bit of fresh solder, a tweezer, and the cables. Yes, the first one is in. I hope you can see that. And the second one is also fixed down. Is it? Yeah. Looks good to me. So I'll just need to find out how to route these cables, and then we will proceed installing the UltraHDMI. To clean the board down before we install it, I'll just use a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and a toothbrush to loosen the dirt. And then I'll try to rinse it off with more alcohol, and also from the top, because I think a lot of my flux ran down under the chip, and I hope I can get it out again using this method. Yes. Okay, and I'll just try to use this paper towel to suck the alcohol and the dirt away from the board. Yeah, this looks a lot better. And while you try to do this, don't rip the cable away. This will ruin your day. So for this mod I'm using a so-called no-cut modification. For that I have printed out two plastic parts. I'll show you the second one if I find it. So this is replacement for the AV out connector shell, and it has a small cutout printed in for the micro HDMI connector, no, mini HDMI connector, and this support plate which lifts the Ultra HDMI module up a little bit so that the connector is in the right height. On a normal install you would just cut a little bit out from this plastic part on the back of your console and lower the module down completely so that the connector is down in this plastic part and not up on the plastic part in the cut on the upper part. So you just need to lower this piece down, and normally you would now put this black foam down here, but it doesn't fit anymore and it's not thick enough anymore. So I just decided to cut it in two pieces that would fit in the spot and glue them down on each other, so the final assembly gets a little bit thicker and is then thick enough to keep the Ultra HDMI module in place. So let me just put that foam down there, get the not sticky part off from the sticky part of this foam, and put that foam piece on the other foam piece. If you now have a couple of screws, a couple of plastic screws in 2mm size, I guess, handy, you can also screw the Ultra HDMI module down to this plastic spacer, and to print the plastic spacer in place, I will link the Thingiverse part down in the description. And for the hardware version 2, you also need a modified part of the top plastic part, because it has a little bit of a cutout here to fit the digital to analog converter module. I think if you have hardware 2 and no digital to analog converter module, you can use the standard no-cut part. So just 2 more screws to go. Okay, they don't need to be super tight because the plastic part under the Ultra HDMI module is not fixed to anything. So you are just holding the Ultra HDMI module and the plastic part together, and not the Ultra HDMI module in place final. So I can just still lift it out. It might be an idea to place a little bit of double-sided tape under there, but I don't want to have any problems if I want to get the Ultra HDMI module out again. One thing I noticed is that now I'll have a problem to place this shielding piece, because it just interferes with the thickness of other components. That's perhaps a little downside to the no-cut mod, but I'll just leave the metal piece out and place the N64 board down here without it, and the plastic part of the bottom connector of the N64 will press the Ultra HDMI module in place. And then we just need to add the other foam part, the bright foam part. It's a little bit softer, and it's added under the analog portion, just on this connector, and it will make sure that nothing of the board will, nothing of the Ultra HDMI module will have contact to the N64 board. So we finally just need to after I focused, just need to bend the flex cables in place. Perhaps I need to focus again a little bit higher to be able to connect it to the board. The connector for the digital cable is on this side, and the connector for the analog cable, if you got the analog option, is here. So we need to get this cable somehow to that side, and this cable somehow here. So for the digital cable, there are these, whoops, if you can see it, there are these notches in the flex cable. These are the positions where you need to bend the cable, but when bending the cable you should be very careful, because you want to bend the cable and not make a kink in the cable, because a kink might mean that the fine traces on this flex flat cable will break and ruin your flat flex cable, and you will have a lot of fun getting a new flat flex cable, or just using small wires to make every connection yourself. And I think that's not a lot of fun. So let me just make a 90-degree bend here. And a second one here. I'm not sure. I'll just trust that the position is correct. Second bend. So yes, this looks good. We can put this cable down here. But before we can connect this cable, we'll need to find out how to bend the other cable. And I'll just take a quick look at a post in the forum. How to bend this cable. So it looks like there are these two kings. So I guess I'll just need to bend it this way. I hope you can see that. Two kings, one there, bend it this way. And here are no kings, but there are small copper traces, which are not connected to anything, but I think between the gaps in these copper traces mark the place where I need to bend the cable. But I need to find out if this connector needs to stay this way or this. Oh, it's the same way around however I bend it. So this should be good. I don't know if I forgot something, but I will just try to place it. No, I think I should open these connectors before. This one is pulling the lever up, and this connector up here is pulling the lever carefully out. So the lever is going in the direction of this chip, not up, just going here. And then I'll try to place my board. And I hope I'm not doing anything wrong. Yeah, cable in the way. So bending it here, bending it there. And then placing it down. Then trying with the tweezers to shove the cable in there. That's not easy. Not easy. Is there a tool to help? Too thick. Okay, just try. Perhaps it's a good idea to bend the connector a little bit up. So that if I try to get it under there, it tries to lift itself into the connector. Looks good. And then close the connector. So, and after that, the dark part on top of the connector, that is here in a little bit bigger. This part is to strengthen the flat flex cable where the connector is. So you have more rigidity to get the cable inside the connector. This part needs to a kind of flush end with the lever of the connector. It can stick a little bit out, perhaps half a millimeter, but not further. If it sticks out further, you didn't put it in completely. So first connector done. I hope everything will fit here if I screw it down. It looks a little bit tight using the no-cut mod. Oh, I need to put this piece a little bit over. Do I need to? I don't know. Yeah, it needs to slide on to the analog connector. So you need to do it with the board lifted up. If you screw down the board first, you won't get this piece on. Okay, putting it in place again. Looks good to me. So I'm just checking that this cable is not clamped down between this connector and the shell. So if I screw it down, I won't hurt this cable. Then I'll try and pre-band this connector also a little bit to make it easier to get in. Okay. The connector down here is still opened. And I'll just feed it in and later check that this cable stays correctly in place. I think I'll just use a little bit of tape to stick it down because I don't want the cable to get on here and be punctured by a screw. So I'll just feed the cable in. You can see. Let me focus down there. Then I'll shove the cable in. The cable has a smaller part and a wider part. And the wider part needs to hit the connector. So if you shove the cable in, the cable needs to go down so far, if you can see it, that the does it really need to go down that far? No. It just hits at the back. Okay. And when it hits at the back of the connector, you need to put the lever down. The cable will stay in place. If you just pull a little, you will notice it won't move. And then your connector should be down in there correctly, I hope. Okay. Then we should try to somehow fix the cable in place so it doesn't get damaged when we close the casing. Perhaps we should look at the top part of the casing because I am planning to still mount this part if possible. We will need to mount this part because it's used for cooling of the console. I think that's why this cable moves this strange way to be able to get out of the metal shell. Okay, you can see this is the way the cable moves, and perhaps we don't need to tie the cable down, because I think these screws are mounted now, so we still see the cable and can check that we don't damage it. When we then put down the other part of the casing, we have enough space to not interfere with the cable. Okay, so but before we will need to put the metal pieces back onto the chips so that the chips are cooled correctly. So we will now try to get the console back together. First of all, we have this big metal shield which connects the metal parts that I put back onto the chips, which try to get the heat out of the chips. And it connects to these metal blocks and tries to suck the heat away from them. So we need to put it down onto the console, and while doing that, try to not pinch the cable and not get the cable in the way of a screw, or if we put down the screw, we will also damage the cable. So that's first this big metal piece, which we will screw down to the PCB with the screws with the little attached metal shims. I don't know how they are called in English. These are the first screws that hold the metal piece down to the PCB. And now I noticed that I made a big mistake, because there are a lot more metal pieces to attach here. So first I need to get a real Phillips screwdriver and get these screws out again. Then I think this big metal piece comes first. After that, these smaller metal piece for the memory connector, where you can put your expansion module. And it's somehow not going into its place on the connector. No, I think I got it. And this small metal spring which goes in the slit between the other metal parts and the connector. I think that's a lot of shielding for the small connector. Now I can put these two screws in place, but I think I'll not screw them down too tightly before I have a lot of the other screws in place. Like the one here, which goes down into plastic, but it seems not to be the correct screw. Must be one of that screws. It's going in too hard. I don't think that's the correct screw. Okay, then I'll start with the screws in the metal blocks. And also that screw is making a hard way in. Okay. There, I got it. Perhaps the metal pieces are not aligned correctly, but at the moment I don't have an idea how it would go in better. And it's a good idea to turn the screw a little bit backwards until you feel the screw falling into its thread, and then screwing it tight. Oh, that one doesn't want to go in there. Because this way you can find the old thread and you're not turning in a new thread, which makes your screw holes last longer. I'm missing screws. Oh yes, I'm missing one screw and these two don't belong there, because on these two positions, I don't know why, perhaps design, I don't know if you can see them from the outside, but Nintendo decided to place black screws there. Okay, I think I made a new thread there. Not as I told you. I need a finer Phillips head to screw these two screws in place. We have these silver screws. They belong to the connectors, as far as I know. This plastic part from the no-cut mod interferes a little bit with the screw threads and makes it hard to find the original screw thread in the plastic post where you turn the screw in. There are two very long screws, and I think they belong to the cartridge connector. Can I find the last short screw? Yes, there it is. And we need to place it here. Okay, all screws there. Now these mid-length screws. Okay, the screw I struggled with still needs to go in here. Ah, I found the thread. Nice. Looks good so far. All cables found their place, all screws found their place. Only the outside body screws are left. So we need the upper shell and we need the plastic parts that cover these slots. The only part we don't need anymore is where did I left it? Ah yes, the multi-out plastic part that was replaced by the 3D printed part. So I will just start putting everything back together. focus. Yes. Again, we need a Nintendo special bit because these screws don't have a normal head. I hope I can show this to you. This is some kind of special screw. Oh yes, and I forgot these decorative parts for the feet. And when you put down the memory expansion cover, don't forget to put in your memory expansion or your jumper pack, or you will wonder why your console isn't booting up anymore. And there you see your console's new mini HDMI port. It's upside down. The only downside to this mod is that you will have a hard time to connect the analog out and the HDMI out at the same time. On the classic installation, where you have to cut the plastic down here, the HDMI connector is a little bit lower and you have more space to fit both cables, but I think I won't need to do this. So for me it's okay to have this plastic part that allows me not to cut into the case of my console. So the next thing we will do is to try out if my N64 still works and if the HDMI output also works. So let's try out if my N64 goes up in flames, or I'll have a working HDMI connection now. No smoke so far, that's good. I'm waiting for a picture on the screen and there it is. Okay, you can't see a lot, but let me clear this up a little, if I have enough space, and can turn down the lights. We might be able to see something. So far so worse. Then let's try what this thing does. So if you want to reset your console, you press B, A, Start, Z and R. Did it work? Let's start a demo. That seems to work fine. Let's try to reset the console again. Not working. Can we get the menu of the UltraHDMI? What was the combination? I think left, right. No. Z, right. Z, right. Right, C, right, and D-pad, right. Yes, that comes up. Options. Oh, in-game reset is turned off by default. Then I want to turn it on. Back. Save preset, slot 1. Okay. Oh, it did reset? Oh, it just reset the UltraHDMI module. Now I can try to reset the console. Oh, wrong combination. A, B, Start, Z and R. Perfect. That worked. Start the demo again. Okay, then we open the menu again with the Z, D-pad R, C, D-pad right, C right and R. We go to the About section and there is a self-test. So, and that shows us that we have problems. It says that pin 17 is shorted to ejectance and adjacent pin 18, okay, to its neighbor, and shows 4 problems, but I only see 2, okay. I don't know exactly if this program has audio, so it might be a problem that this program doesn't have audio. No, wrong combination. Which one might use audio? I don't know. I'm just using demos because I don't want to have any copyright infringement with Nintendo. What's that? It would look like to me to have audio. This monitor doesn't have audio, so I don't exactly know if this demo plays audio. Let's go back to the menu, About, self-test. Okay, that looks a lot better. So we don't have any issues anymore. I think this installation was a success. So thank you for watching, and I hope you liked that video. You can use the comments to try to contact me if I read them. I don't know, and I hope this will help you installing your own UltraHDMI module in your own console. Have a lot of fun. And I just found this thank you screen, and I don't know the names, but I think there are 2 people missing, and these 2 people did a great job organizing a group buy to get these UltraHDMI modules, and that are Ichinisan and C0, or I don't know how to pronounce these names. 2 twin brothers that made themselves a lot of headache and a lot of work to get these modules bought from the manufacturer or the developer of these modules, and they had a lot of patience in round 7 to get these modules, which were developed to the second hardware revision, which they didn't know before they tried to buy them. And yeah, these 2 guys had a lot of headaches and a lot of work to do, and I just wanted to say thank you to them at this point of the video. Goodbye. And for some extra content, a big fat cat on the table. Yes, big fat cat. Hmm? Solder. No, not eating it. She likes solder a lot. Hmm? Ouch.